Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, and me, Greg the Single Guy. We are recording episodes from around the globe to tell you about the best kept secret in education. That's right, it's teaching overseas. We're glad to have you join us.
Hey, welcome to the International Teacher Podcast. I'm Kent the Cat Guy, and with me today is Greg the Single Guy. We're still missing Matt the Family Guy, but we've got a special guest today. His name is Jeff, and he's coming from the American School in Japan. Help me, Greg the Single Guy, give a warm welcome to our special guest, Jeff.
Woo! Welcome, Jeff. Hey, all right.
Welcome,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
So, Jeff, tell us a little bit about your education journey, starting when you became a new teacher till you decided to move overseas.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Philadelphia and spent many years there and went to university there, got my teaching credential in music education with jazz piano concentration. And right out of college, I started teaching at a Quaker school in Philadelphia. And I taught middle school and high school music, general music, jazz band, did some advising work, did some baseball coaching in the middle school, lots of different things. And I was there 8 years. And I decided after those 8 years, I'd been teaching there. I did my master's part-time, also same place I did my undergrad. And then I decided to leave that job and go and do a PhD in music education. Became a teaching assistant, and that was back in 2019. And I got about a semester and a half in before COVID hit, and then spent the next 2 years basically online doing the degree. And I'm still not done, but I'm close enough to have then looked for another teaching job, K-12, and that's what brought me into the international circuit, which is where I am now.
So, Jeff, when you first went overseas, can you dial back a little bit and tell us how you found the job? I know we communicated about a year and a half ago on ITP, and you had been listening to us in our early days. Tell us a little bit about how you found your job that you have now.
Yeah. Well, so it happened in many different ways because I knew that I wanted to do something different. And my wife and I had always talked about living somewhere other than Philadelphia and other than the United States. And so I had heard about international teaching. I honestly don't remember the first time. It wasn't this podcast. I'm sorry to say it was before this podcast, but I'd heard about it. Someone mentioned it to me and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I get to teach in a school in another country in English and live abroad. Wow. All right. And so I started doing research and just asking people questions and setting up Zoom calls because we were in the middle of a pandemic and talking to lots of people. And people kept telling me what you need to do. And they said, you need to do this, the agencies, Search Associates, ISS, Schroll, all of that. And you need to do this, you need to do that. You need to look at TIE online and, TES and all these things. And I was like, oh, okay. And I started taking notes. And figuring it all out. And then I came across a podcast that was very informative. It was this one. And
thank you for pointing that out. I was about to ask which one you were listening to.
Yeah, no, it was another podcast. No, it was this one. And I would listen to it religiously as I was in the car driving somewhere or whatever and trying to just like picture myself abroad. And so anyway, after I had figured all that out, I signed up for the agencies. And I, it was really a 2-year process because I was in this PhD. I was hoping to finish before we moved. And that didn't happen because we wanted to move and I wasn't going to be done in time. So we just applied. And so, like I said, I was registered for all those agencies, set up my Search Associates profile, which took a lot of work, to be honest. ISS, less work. Schroll, even less work. And I also signed up for Carney Sandow. I don't know how many folks use that, but that was more for independent schools in the United States, but then also a little bit abroad. And so I just sort of put my name out there everywhere, and I would get job postings that would pop up on the dashboard on Search Associates or ISS or whatever, and I would apply basically. And music jobs, there aren't a ton.
So, Jeff, tell us a little bit how your wife fits into the puzzle of finding a job, whether she's a teacher or not.
Yeah. So she's not a teacher, but she works in schools, and her career has been in fundraising, annual giving, advancement work. And so she was looking as well for jobs, except those jobs are even less. There aren't many of them out there compared to music teaching jobs. Some schools have them, but in order for us to find two jobs that matched what we wanted was challenging. So currently, she is not working here in Japan.
How old are your kids, Jeff?
21 months and 4 years old. Yeah, so they're young.
When you're back in the States and you decide to apply internationally, what was that conversation like with your wife when you broached the subject of going overseas?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been on the same page from the very beginning, and with our kids, especially, like it was, if we weren't on the same page, we wouldn't be here right now because, especially them being so young, it had to be the right decision for all of us. I've spent a lot of time in Cuba over the years, and my wife lived abroad in Spain for about 6 months back in college. We've done some other traveling, and so we've always wanted to see the world and experience it, and so it was a no-brainer when we could take our kids and do that very thing and give them those new experiences.
So, where did you end up going for your job fair? Did you go to Search Associates?
So I didn't end up going to any job fairs, mostly because of COVID. And I should take that back. I did attend one through ISS that was a virtual fair, which is not the same as going in person, of course, but that was the best I could do. And so that nothing really came of that. I think I interviewed with one school, but it just didn't pan out. But yeah, no, it was just Search Associates. When I would log into the website, I would see the jobs that were posted, and if it looked like a good fit, I would fill out the application and apply.
All right, go for it, Kent. I know you have a question on your mind. He's got this questioning look on his face.
So how did you hook up with your current school? If you didn't meet them at a fair, did you reach out to them? How did you hook up with the ASIJ?
One day on Search Associates, it was the new job of the day. It was just posted. It was a middle school and high school band teacher at the American School in Japan in Tokyo. And I will be honest that Asia wasn't on our radar at the time, mostly because of the distance, because it's a 12+ hour flight from Philadelphia. It's not a direct flight. We have to fly through New York. And we were thinking more really anywhere that was just closer, Europe, other places that fit that bill, but certainly Japan wasn't there. But then when we looked at the job and looked at the posting and looked at the school and Japan in general and all these things, it was just like, all right, let me apply. Let me try this because you never know. And then I ended up hearing back and interviewing, and the interviewing process was quite the ride as well. And I can talk a little bit about that, but
can I just jump in here then and say it's adorable that you say that you had to really think about being so far away that it was a 10 to 12-hour flight.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Welcome to international teaching. I just got off my I can't even talk anymore. My brother and my father came for Christmas, and from Miami, it was a 14-hour flight to Dubai.
Yeah.
And then I put him in another plane for another 4.5 hours to Maldives. So it's so adorable that we have a new international teacher with us. I know you've been to Cuba and a little bit of Spain, but welcome to the land of 12-hour, 14-hour flights, right, Kent? We do it all the time.
I think I have the winner. I have the Dubai-Seattle flight, and I think I have the winner because that's between 15 and 16 hours.
Yeah,
16 hours with Kent on a plane. Can you imagine that?
Can you imagine?
Laughing the whole time?
What I will say though, once we did the flight, and we haven't done it back yet, of course, but coming here, my younger son slept for 10 of the 12 hours. And that was the biggest concern. It was like, how will the kids be? Like, I don't mind the 12-hour flight, my wife, but them, and they were really fantastic.
What was it that put the kid out for that long? That's a long time to be out.
Yeah, we flew at night. That was it.
There you go.
It was
just the bedtime.
I think we left at 7 p.m. from New York, and I think something like that. So it was like, it just worked out.
So you are actually, and that's not easy to even set up interviews because you are ahead of us right now by 4 hours. So you have quite a bit of difference in time, right? What's that, Kent? What were you doing?
6 hours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're
He's got
6
6
hours.
hours on us.
You're 6 hours ahead of us,
Mm-hmm.
and we're hours. And how far are you ahead of your family, for example, in the States?
So what is it? It's almost 9 p.m. here. So it's 7 a.m. Is that right? 7 a.m. yesterday.
Wow.
So it's yeah, we're ahead about 14 hours right now. Yeah. So when I was interviewing for the job, my interviews were in the evening in Philadelphia because that was daytime here in Japan. So I remember interviewing. My first interview was at, I think, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and my whole family was asleep, and I'm at the kitchen table in my suit waiting for the interview to start. And then my second round interview, it was over Thanksgiving break, and we had gone to upstate New York in the mountains at a little place for a couple of days, and it was 10:30 at night, and I was using the manager's office that I had convinced them to let me use because our room was small, and I'm interviewing in this space, and there's windows everywhere, and like people are out in this hotel, and that was funny. So
yeah, I remember the time differences because I also interviewed over online instead of in person.
mm-hmm.
And I remember it being like 3:30 in the morning, and I've got my dress shirt here and my pajamas on down below. I'm glad I didn't have to stand up and stretch during the interview.
Yep.
You even put on nice shoes for that, I bet, huh?
I think I did, actually.
You mentioned that the fairs were disrupted because of COVID. What about entry into Japan? Was that disrupted at all?
We were lucky because by the time we traveled, all we had to do was show a negative COVID test. And then we were able to come into the country with no quarantine or anything, or test, because I think it was only like 2 months or something before we had traveled here in July. You had to show the negative COVID test, and you had to take another COVID test when you arrived in Japan, and then also quarantine, either way, I think. And so every few months they relaxed those. By the time we got here, it was just take a COVID test before you leave, and as long as it was negative, get on the plane and you were good to go. So that wasn't too bad. But COVID here is very different than in the States because we're still wearing masks, and there are a lot of things that are still in place that are not that way in the States.
It's a great opportunity to talk to you because this is your first overseas assignment. So you signed on the dotted line with your school in Japan.
Yeah.
You resigned from your job in the States. What was communication and contact like with your school? What was it like working with your school to make that transition?
Yeah. Well, it was a long process because I signed the contract in December, and we didn't fly to Japan until the end of July. And so it was a lot of back and forth with the school, and they were fantastic with the transition. Just everything from paperwork to helping with housing and all that sort of stuff was just really, really well done, but it took time. And, it was a lot of back and forth and a lot of videos of houses and pictures and stuff and saying, oh, this is good, this isn't good. Let's see what works, I will say, I think the hardest part was the end. Well, two things, right? Anticipating getting there, because that's a long time to like think about what you're going to do. Like 6 months is a long time to just like imagine what your house is going to be like, what the school is going to be like, all that stuff. And so it was that was a struggle. And then getting things ready to move, because we had a house, we had 2 cars, um, accumulated lots of things. And, we sold our house, we sold the cars, we um, sold a lot of stuff or packed it up and put it in various basements and our parents' houses and things like that. And then shipped a bunch of stuff, which was stressful because, like, what do you need? What don't you need? And it was just a lot of steps, big spreadsheets of all the things we had to do, and it was a lot of lead up, but it was all worth it in the end. It just took a long time.
How long did it take when you hit the ground in Japan for your stuff to show up?
We were lucky because we decided to do an air shipment as opposed to a sea shipment. And that meant, because of the price, that we took half as much stuff as if we were shipping by sea. But it just made the most sense because we wanted certain things more quickly and weren't bringing furniture because houses here are very different and smaller. And so we just were going to buy everything here. So I guess everything left like July 10th, maybe. We flew out on the 26th, I think. These dates might be a little off, but then we got our stuff maybe the third week in August. So it was pretty quick, honestly. So that was nice. Just a couple weeks without the things we needed. And honestly, most of our shipment beyond like kitchen stuff and clothing was kids' toys and clothing and things like that for the kids. So that was nice to have when that showed up.
What did any of your appliances, anything you plug into the wall, were you able to take them and use them in Japan?
No, I mean, we could have brought some things, used converters and all that. Some of it might have even worked, but we just opted to buy all new stuff. The only thing we brought with us via the shipment was a TV, because we were told that they were more expensive if we bought them here, and it would have been in Japanese. So we did that, and that was worth it. But everything else, we just sort of bought here.
First, let's talk a little bit about Japan. I have this
Sure.
beautiful, romantic vision of landing in Tokyo, which is where you're at, right? Tokyo?
Yep.
Okay. And landing in Tokyo and not knowing anything about it, but everything is small. like your apartment is small in a closet, and your everything, your bowl of rice is small. Everything is small, and it's all fit on one island. That's what I think of when I think of Japan. That and other things like Godzilla and stuff. I have never been to Japan.
Yeah.
Right. I know Kent is groaning because I mentioned Godzilla, but I'm so outdated with Japan. I have no idea.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about Japan. I'm anxious to hear.
Yeah. Well, the things that you mentioned are true in certain ways, although the Godzilla one, maybe not as much. You don't see, I mean, I've seen him on the top of a building, but other than that, I haven't seen him much. I think before we moved here, I thought everything was smaller too. And that is true. Like, you go to the grocery store and, being used to the big giant packages in the States, everything here is certainly just smaller. A pack of salad, for example, like the pre-packed washed salad is like a third of the size it would be in the States or something like that. Like, that's sort of in comparison. And if you're downtown in the main part of Tokyo, it's certainly small, and the apartments are small, and there's so many people and so much stuff.
So is space an issue, right?
Space is an issue.
What I'm thinking about.
Yes.
And joking aside, I mean, like, everything that I can think of is that there is a lack of space. So everything, it fits sort of together until you get outside of the main cities. The main cities are packed like any other big city, but just more, right?
Yes.
Am I right about that? Yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I will say that we're in the suburbs, quote unquote suburbs. The school is in a little more of a suburban area, and where we live is also a little more suburban. We're about a 30-minute train ride from Shinjuku Station, which is downtown. And so all the big skyscrapers and all of that stuff is a little ways away, just a train ride away, but certainly a very different situation than where we are, because we wouldn't have a house downtown. We wouldn't have this much space. We wouldn't be able to walk on the street in the same way we would. So anyway, like it depends where you are, even within Tokyo, which is pretty big.
And I know this is very school specific, but while we're talking about your school and your first time out, when you arrived at school, did they have a stipend for you for housing, or did they have specific housing? How did the housing options work for you?
Housing, we do have a housing stipend, and we get to pick how we use it. The school has options; they would bring us options, and we could decide on what we liked and where we wanted to live within the area of the school, and they would do all the paperwork and all that sort of stuff. And as long as it fit within our budget, we could make it happen.
And they had a couple people that would drive you around and show you different places to live in your first first week or so that you were there. They'd have show you some options, right?
So my understanding is pre-COVID, that's what they did. They'd have you in a hotel and then drive you around until you found a place. But with COVID, they did it all remotely, and so I got we got emails with videos and pictures and descriptions and cost and all that from the school, and my wife and I would look at them and decide if we wanted it, and then email back and say we'd like it, or just pass on it and wait for the next one. And that's where we found our current place. But when we got here, we were in a hotel for a couple of days because we couldn't quite move in to the house, and we needed to have like a fridge and some furniture, because most places here in Japan, when you rent them, don't come with any appliances or light fixtures even, or blinds, or even air conditioners. Sometimes we were lucky that some of those things already came with our house, but we couldn't move in for a few days. So
well, that's what makes all that moving in fun, and especially as you're trying to get used to a new culture, a new language, being up at different hours of the day, communicating differently. Your school's about to start. Everything, you're still trying to find a job. You're staying at a hotel with your kids. I've been there and I've done that kind of thing. Every school is very different, but your school, the American school in Japan, is very well established. It's been there for a long time. Is it about 2,000 students, or is it a little bit less?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's less than 2,000. Yeah,
Okay, it's just a detail I know. Yeah,
yeah.
But it's well established, so they have an intake of when new teachers come in. They have it really well established. From what I understand, what you're talking about, they have a great intake for the new teachers to make you feel welcome when you first arrive. Not every school is like that. I'm glad to hear that ASIJ does that for you, because most of the upper crust schools, the upper crust meaning the higher end schools that we like to talk about and we all want to get into, those are the schools that take care of their employees as they arrive and have different options. Either it's a stipend, or they put you in a hotel, or they put you right into a housing that they've already planned out for you. There's many different options and many different permutations of arrivals, and it's exciting to hear that. But I know your school is very well established, and I'm happy that you landed your first job at such a well established and great package type of school, right? Kent, have you heard of ASIJ? Have you heard of it before, Kent?
I have. I think they're over 100 years old.
Yep.
And I know some of the famous graduates. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Whoa, really?
Oh, I mean, not personally. I mean, I just know some
Kent
of the names that have come from. But I did have a question, though. I looked at the website earlier, and there was a picture of Jim Harbaugh on the website. I don't know if you know this. And so I had to look it up, or at least someone who looks like him. I don't think he ever went to the American school in Japan. I don't know why they have him. Do you have sports? Is there like an American sports program at your school?
Yes, we do. We have a football team, wrestling, baseball, basketball. We've got it all.
I can understand basketball. I can understand baseball. Big sports that have existed in Japan. What about American style football? Is that popular?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. When I said football, I did in fact mean American football. They also have soccer, but yeah, American football, popular. Um, I'm trying to think of the schools that we play, and I think a few of them are the base schools, the military base schools, and then some of the other international schools in Tokyo, I believe, have. But I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, we do have a football program.
And so are you the band director?
So I'm one of three band directors.
And do you take a certain grade level? How do you guys divide that duty as directors?
Yeah, so we have a sixth grade band, a seventh grade band, an eighth grade band, and then two bands in the high school, a concert band and a wind ensemble, and then a high school jazz band. And then we also have an orchestra program, 6 through 12, and also a choral program, 6 through 12. So actually in total, 5 music teachers altogether teaching all of those things plus some electives.
And which ones of those programs do you work with?
Yeah, so right now I co-teach sixth grade with the two other band teachers because that's beginning band. So I think we have 81 students this year, all starting out. So it's a lot, lot of hands-on work to get them going on their instruments. And then I co-teach seventh grade band and eighth grade band as well. And then I direct the high school jazz band by myself. And then I teach a guitar elective in the high school to students who have never taken guitar or have a little bit of guitar experience.
We'll take a moment's break now to remind you how to reach out to us. Of course, you can address any negative comments to Kent, the cat guy. We do love to hear from you. If you're out on Facebook, we don't do that, but our handle on both Instagram and Twitter are at ITPExpats with an S, ITPEXPATS. As a handle, if you want to, you can send us an old email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com, or you can visit us at our new website at www.itpexpat.com. www.itpexpat.com. Well, back to the show. You know that Kent and I are both musicians at heart and out in public too. And Kent is a flautist, I believe you call
and
it,
a former
flautist.
trombonist.
Very cool.
And I played trombone in my high school jazz band.
Awesome.
Right? And I played, and I'm leading up to something here though, Jeff, but I did play also in high school and a little bit in college.
Yeah.
And the cool thing was, and Kent knows this, that of all the things in the world, there's a couple things is, one is across the quad from me in my apartments, the single apartments, lived a guy that actually fixed clarinets. I don't know why. He was a trombone player, and he played in a jazz band locally here at near our school, and he fixed clarinets for some reason. I think he just needed something to do, and he was like really good with his hands. So he would order clarinet parts, and he had like 30 or 40 clarinets. And I actually bought a nice clarinet from him. I've got one of the Silver Kings from 1925 that he refurbished for me. Fantastic. But leading up to, we had the best jazz band in the Middle East just before COVID. And I was in a band, and I had not played my saxophone for 30 years. 30 years, Jeff, and I had not played it. Kent, did we sound good? Did I sound okay?
You sounded great. I was not in the band, but the band, and it was a hit because if you had heard this on a previous episode, you would know that they played in one of the very first legal outdoor concerts in our region.
Did we talk about it already on this podcast? We did.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Well, we need to get Jeff, we need to get you in touch with Chris Colma. He was on episode 42, and he's got international teachers. I don't know if you guys have connected, or we will get you connected. And we also talked about Japan back in ITP number 14, episode 14, about a year ago. We talked with another guy about Japan, but that was different. So we've got you, because now we've got you with Japan and music, and we can talk about all this good stuff. I'm excited about you going overseas with your kids and landing in Tokyo and being at this massive school. And you haven't even finished your first year yet, right? You're still in the middle. You're back to school now, and we're back in the swing of things. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
First year teaching at overseas, right? Not first year teacher. No way. and you've almost got a doctorate. We're going to be calling you Dr. Jeff pretty soon.
Soon.
Right. Tell us a little bit about school and adjusting to overseas. Come on, let's get into a little bit of adjustment here for your first year teaching.
I think it was challenging when I got here to get used to the school, because I had been in a school, my previous K-12 school that I taught at, I was there 8 years. And so I knew everybody. I knew all the processes. I knew all the kids, really. I had taught them all, basically. So every year a new group would come in. I'd learn about them and their names, but like I taught everyone else. So I really did know the community. And so coming into ASIJ, while everyone was very welcoming, it was a really steep learning curve. Figuring out names, to be perfectly honest. Student names, yeah, that's always something, but faculty and staff, and recognizing people with masks and no masks, and just remembering all of that. And then who do you talk to for what? And
finding the bathroom, where the bathrooms are, where's this part of the building, how do you, and then you can't even figure out how to dial out, right? The little things like, how do I dial out on my cell phone or on a regular phone? I mean, these are all these things hit at the same time, right?
Yeah, I don't even know how to use the phone in my office. I just leave it there. I think someone called me on
Neither
it
do
once.
I.
Yeah, right. But yeah, yeah. And like, I will say one of the things that threw me for a loop was I was so used to locking my door at my old school, and my laptop, like putting that in the drawer and locking it up and all that. And we don't do that in Japan, because Japan is very safe and people are trustworthy. And so that took a little getting used to, like being able to leave my stuff somewhere and coming back and it was there, and trusting that the kids overall would respect that as well. And that was tough too, to get used to.
Is it okay? Let's talk a little bit about the kids then. I had another interview that I was on another podcast, and they asked me this question. They said, and I'm going to direct it to you. They asked me, are the kids any different?
No. I mean, kids are kids, honestly.
I agree.
Like they may, I think the difference is their backgrounds are different, right? And so I have kids with American passports and Japanese passports and EU passports, and insert passport, right? That sort of background, that's very diverse, right? And that is a difference. But in terms of like kids and how you interact with them and how you teach them and all that, they're pretty similar, which is really
I
cool.
agree. That was my answer, right?
Yeah.
And I'll let Kent needs to chime in on this also, because he's been to Yemen and he's here in the Middle East now again. But for me, around the world, kids are kids.
Yeah.
They have the same worries, especially if you're talking elementary. They have the same worries about who their friend is and who's standing in line with them and who's not talking to them.
Right.
If they're in middle school, they're going through all the crises of a middle schooler. And if they're in high school, of course, their identities are just fragile and they're learning about life and they're going way off, and school may not be as important as it is for other things in their life. But I tell you what, I agree with you, and my answer is the same. Kids are the same. The only thing that I've found different is that overseas teaching, I have found the respect from the students and the respect from the parents is vastly different than what I understand is like in the States. I didn't teach in the States. I did all my preparatory, but I have a lot of friends there teaching in different states. And I relish the kind of respect is a big word for me, right? Kent, what do you think? Are kids the same?
I've bored 16 different passports with my math lessons on a daily basis. They're all the same level of boredom, the same look in their eyes after 10 minutes of the lesson. Now, what is the balance of passport holders at ASIJ between expats and students who are born and raised in Japan?
That's a good question. I think it's a mix. I think there are a lot of students that come from a Japanese background, Japanese family, but it's hard to quantify. I'm sure there are numbers on the website that give sort of a better background than I could, because I don't even know half the time with some folks. Like I teach who's in front of me, and I know their background a bit and what they've told me, but I don't know necessarily who's who.
Kent, you remember your first time overseas, Kent? Your first year, you're trying to figure things out. Absolutely, at a new school, and I don't blame Jeff. It's like you're just pointing at kids, going, "You and you and you," and you're trying to figure out who they are, and much less where they're from, right, Kent?
Yeah.
You have to remember that Jeff is in his first year overseas, and that passport question, the idea of getting close to the kids, especially as a specialist, is difficult, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Who are these kids? As a specialist, your kids are coming through your classroom. I would imagine quite a few.
Yeah. I will say though, I mean, I do have a lot of kids that come through with band, but I am lucky based on our schedule that we get the kids the same amount of time as their history class or their math class. I see them every other day for an hour and 10, 15 minutes, which is pretty magical. It has taken some time. I mean, I think at this point in the year, I certainly know the kids pretty well, but sometimes they surprise me when I'm talking to them and I realize they lived in 3 different countries, or they're actually originally from a place I never thought they would be from. Just it always amazes me. It's always a new insight and new piece of information, which is really cool.
Welcome to international teaching, Jeff.
Yeah.
Kent and I love that part of it. I know Matt does too. You look out at your students and you just see it's a painting, and they're all from different world countries. It is fantastic.
Do you work long hours? Do you work a little bit extra? Do you take on activities? Is that part of the culture of the school?
Every teacher is asked to do an activity or sport, something like that, and it's finding a good fit for that particular teacher, right? And so, for example, I coached 6th grade baseball at my last school for 8 years, and so I'll be doing middle school baseball in the spring, coaching that. Also doing some work with a jazz club in the high school, which is mostly student led, but I help out a little bit with that. And so that's a piece of the puzzle. And then, in terms of the work life balance, I'm usually in by about 7:30. School starts at 8. School ends at 3. Some days I leave at 3:15 or 3:30 because I need to pick my kids up, or I just am leaving because I've given all I could give that day. And some days I'll stay later. Some days I'll stay till 4 or 4:30, and sometimes take work home with me. I won't lie about that. Like, we're in report card mode right now, end of semester 1, and I've certainly been working at home to get that work done. And it's like anything else. Sometimes there's lots of grading and lots to do, and other times there's not. So, but I think the school encourages a work-life balance. They don't want people there at 6:30 in the morning and leaving at 6, unless they're doing a sport or something. But they certainly encourage you to give your all when you're there, but then when you're not at work, to not be working, not sending emails at 10 o'clock at night, or doing work-related things on the weekends unless they're completely necessary, which I appreciate because not every school's like that.
You guys are on the American schedule. You start up in September, you end in June, because the Japanese schools, they start in April and end in March or something like that. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, we're on the American schedule. We start late August and early June. This year it was 2.5 week long winter break, week long spring break, a couple smaller breaks throughout the year, and then the summer. It's about 8 weeks or maybe even 10 weeks.
Did you get a chance to travel over the holiday? And Happy New Year, by the way. Did you get a
Yeah.
chance to travel over Christmas? And tell us a little bit what you did then.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, we did do a little bit of traveling. We stayed in Japan over the winter holiday, mostly because when we decided to travel, it was back in, I think we might have even booked it in September, and we couldn't fathom leaving the country and coming back, because if we had gotten COVID, it seemed too complicated. So we stayed, and we flew down to an island south of Okinawa called Ishigaki, which was beautiful, and stayed for about a week and just got to relax a bit. The weather was a little rainy the first couple of days, but then it got into some good weather to walk around the beach and go to the pool, and that sort of thing, and experience life on an island, a small island in Japan, and then we came back and spent some time here in Tokyo and did Christmas here and New Year's and explored the city a bit because there's so much here to see. And
And you
so
wouldn't think you'd have that kind of a conversation, right? That kind of an answer when someone said, "What'd you do for Christmas?" Like last Christmas, you're probably like, "Well, we went to see the in-laws. They wanted to see Grandpa and Grandma, and then we had to go over here, and we came right back, and it
mhm,
was snowy." But it's exciting that you've changed your whole chapter now. This is a whole different kind of
mhm,
discussion. What you did or where you traveled to, and what I love about your response is that some teachers just pack up and they go back home. I'm not talking about COVID time and post COVID, but
yeah,
generally, when people go overseas, a lot of them just pick up and go first thing they can, they go back home and check in, or they go for home right away. And
mhm,
there's reasons for that. But what I like about your answer is there's so much to see within your host country. And I'm very much similar to that. I try to in most countries. I try to go concentrically around where I'm living and hit the country I'm in as a host country, hit the countries around it, and maybe after that I might have a special purpose and go somewhere else.
yeah, and I'll add to that too. I think that one of the things that my wife and I talk about a lot is we're here, we're doing this international teaching adventure, and so we want to make the most of it, and we want to balance that with also just being at home, right? Because we still are here in this house and want to give our kids that experience of just being in our house as well and exploring our neighborhood and things like that. So finding that balance and also using the ability to travel here, but also like honestly getting on the train and going 30 minutes downtown and spending 6 hours downtown, I think is just as stressful sometimes as going to the airport and getting on a plane. We don't know the language and the train is packed and sometimes, and it can be an adventure in itself.
But what is it that you wake up in the morning that still amazes you, that you kind of wake up and you realize this is my life? And what is it that you think, man, this is awesome?
I love teaching, right? And that might sound cliche because we're on a podcast about teaching, but I love teaching, and so I really do look forward to the days when I go into work and get to work with the amazing kids. And I teach beginners all the way up to the jazz band, for example, is the top level kids who have been playing for years, and seeing that growth and that work that the kids are doing and that they're capable of really makes me go every day and really makes me excited. So that would be my work answer, if you will, or the teaching part of me. But being here in Japan, what excites me is the things I notice that are new. And so I usually take the same route to work every day, but sometimes I'll go a different way, or I'll walk by something 30 times and then realize it was something different, or I just like notice a new detail. And so that is also exciting. And then my kids come home every day and they're in a preschool where they're in an English speaking preschool with kids that are Japanese though as well. And so hearing about their day and what they did always really makes me happy because they're learning and experiencing and noticing new things. And every now and then they'll say something in Japanese, and it just makes me so happy because they're getting that cultural experience, that adventure, that learning that they would have gotten in the States in a different way, but this here is just opening their eyes to so many new things. So that those are the things that excite me and keep me so happy about this adventure every day.
I have two follow-up questions. I'm just aching to ask you the second one, but the first one is: have you learned any Japanese? Can you share a few words with us?
I can, although I will say I think my Japanese level is this. Actually, I think my kids are more advanced than me, um, but I will share a couple words. So I've got konnichiwa, just hello. I've got Ohayo gozaimasu, which is good morning. Konbanwa, which is, I think, good evening. What else? Arigato gozaimasu, which is thank you. Onegashimasu is please. And my current favorite, because I'm trying to learn bit by bit here, is Reji Bukaru, which is plastic bag or shopping bag
Oh, that's
because,
fantastic.
yeah,
Can I try that? Reggie Bukuru?
I
Is
think you
that what
say
it
it better
sort of
than I
sounds like?
do. Yeah, yeah,
No way. No way. You said it. I'm
yeah,
just having
yeah.
fun here.
But I
That's
will.
awesome.
It's cool, and I will say though, I don't know much more because we teach in English, and nobody really speaks Japanese at school very often. But my wife has been taking some Japanese lessons, and so she's progressing each week and doing a fantastic job. And she'll mention things to me, and then I pick up some things. So now I can count to 10 because of her, and those sorts of things. So yeah, those are some words, and it's fun because while our kids at school, sorry, the students speak in English, many of them speak Japanese or know some Japanese, and so every now and then when I will throw a Japanese word out, they're like, "Oh, that was good. That was impressive."
That's exactly the answer I was hoping for, because if you're reaching out and learning a little bit of the host language, everyone I have ever talked to, and my own experiences included, their experience overseas is exponentially better if they're grasping at least a little bit of the language and going with that. So for you to go reach out, and hopefully the school will give you opportunities to learn Japanese, or
Mhm.
you'll learn it through your community and different people. I don't know what it's like where you live in that part of Tokyo in the suburb, but when you leave school, are you immersed in Japanese then?
Yeah, that is one of the things that is the most challenging here. Many people don't speak English, or if they do, they don't choose to. And and that's really difficult, because there are English words on things, but most things are in Japanese, and most people will just speak to you in Japanese, and that is something that you're immersed in the second you leave school, and the second I walk out my front door. And you know certain people will speak English. Every now and then I'm surprised, like we went in a store the other day, and my wife and I were looking at something, and we said something in Japanese and then something in English to each other, and then the person at the store just started speaking to us in English like fluently, and it was like, oh, okay, we can
Yeah,
we
it's
can
a
take a deep
breather,
breath.
right?
It is because you're always
Yeah.
on when you're trying to use
And
the
that's what
Japanese.
and that's what your kids feel like when you're speaking a few and learning a few Japanese words. If you throw them out in class like that, or other languages that you know that your kids might speak at home
Yeah.
as a mother tongue, that one word just
Mhm.
reaches out and makes a little connection with those students that you wouldn't have before. It'll open
Yeah.
up a whole range of new opportunities with the kids, right?
Right.
And I do that all the time because our school has a lot of home mother tongues,
Mhm.
home languages,
Yeah.
and it's important. Some of them don't even speak English when they come to us,
Mm.
and it's interesting to hear you say that. And I hope on your journey, I hope that you reach out and learn more Japanese. It will open up everything outside of school more for you, depending
Yeah.
on how long you end up living there and teaching there
Mhm.
before you maybe move on to your next one. I miss being immersed in a culture where I've learned the language or tried to learn the language,
Mhm.
and that's exciting in itself. But here's my second question. Remember, I told you I have two questions for you. Any cop stories so far?
I knew that was coming. I did, and I have none. I have none.
Ah,
And
you're going to have to come back then on
I,
the show. You're going to have
I,
to come back after you have one.
I will. Well, it's actually funny because I was thinking about this recently about just police in general, and you don't really see them very often, at least where I am. There's a police box right by the train station where there's always two police officers in there. But I think in a week, if I were to just think, I probably that's the only time I ever see police officers here.
Do you have any stories dealing with just the bureaucracy?
Yeah, the bureaucracy here in Japan is quite intense. There are a lot of things you need to do uh, for everything, and so luckily the school is very helpful with that. And if we have questions or concerns or just don't know what to do, we just reach out to the HR department and they help us. I'm trying to think of something that would be an example. Okay, so the bank would be one, right? So went to the bank when we got here, and we I set up my account, right? And English speaking folks, and the account is in English, that's wonderful. But we go to the bank, I have to fill out all the paperwork, and then I asked them about like setting up a credit card or something. And they said, "Oh yes, you can do that after you get your bank account." I said, "Oh, okay." So like tomorrow? And they said, "No, the bank account will take you maybe like a week or two to get your bank account number." I was like, "Okay." So I can do that, and then I can get the credit card, and then I can set up like auto pay for utilities and things like that. And they're like, "Yes, but here's the form you have to fill out for the auto pay where you list all of your account numbers, and then that all gets set up." So I was like, "Okay, fine." So I did all that. I get the online banking. I finally get everything set up. And then I have to pay for my kids' school. And the way that they do it here, like maybe there are checks. I don't know that because I don't have a checkbook. Everything is like bank transfer. So my kid's school gave me the account information. I went online and I went to go to bill pay, the equivalent of bill pay, and I went to go type it in. And it said, "You don't have an authorized payee. You need to generate a token, which will mail to you. And once you receive that, you can enter the token here, and then you'll be able to enter the bank account information." So I was like, "Okay." So I hit the button thinking it was like a paper token one-time thing. But then I called and I said, "Hey, I'm doing this, authenticate my account. Any way we can get around this like 2 to 3 or 5 day mailing of this token?" And they said, "No, there's no way. You have to wait for it to come in the mail."
I thought maybe they'd fax it to you.
Well, that could have been an option maybe because fax machines here are still pretty prevalent.
Oh, I know. I love that.
But so the funniest thing was I finally get this token and I'm like, "What? All right, I'll wait for it, fine." And I get it and I'm expecting this paper thing. It's a little like calculator type size thing with like actual buttons, and it generates a one-time passcode. So I thought every time I needed to do this, I had to wait 5 days in the mail, but they sent me this. And so now whenever I have to add somebody, I just pull that out and use it. So I feel like a spy almost, like I'm in some novel or something. So it's kind of cool, but like to get to that point,
In Switzerland, we had the
right,
same thing with our Swiss bank account. I
right,
didn't have like the James Bond account, but I had this little calculator that I had to put my credit card into from the bank,
yeah,
and it would generate a one-time passcode. And I'm thinking, the phone could probably do something like
yeah,
this, right? But it was some kind of a secure method, but it
yeah,
looked like it was made in 1950, like a calculator that maybe adds and multiplies,
right,
divides, and subtracts. That was it. But it worked, I guess. You had
exactly.
the same thing in Japan. Okay,
Same
I like
thing.
it.
And like everything is like that, like security, everything is like 3 layers. It's very,
You just have to find the right person to talk to at school that has been down that avenue of
yeah,
that specific journey, right? And
right.
everything you do has a different kind of process.
Mhm,
So I would imagine that the other teachers there have gone through something because it's very similar at other schools too, right? There's a big process for this,
mhm.
and I won't even begin to tell you the stories about trying to work at a bank here. It's absolutely asinine, like stupid, crazy.
Yeah.
Right. I won't even want
Okay.
to get into that. Go ahead, Kent.
Now, do you have a stamp with your name on it that you use for documents?
I do, yes. Um, and it was only because we bought a car. And
Okay.
in order to buy a car, you need uh, to have the stamp with my name on it. Yeah. And that was an ordeal as well because you order the stamp and you get your insignia. Um, and then you have to take it to the city office to get it certified. And then they give you a certification card, like an ID card for it, and then a piece of paper that certifies you can use it. And so that's how I could buy the car. But if I needed to use it again, I have to go back to the city office and get like a authenticity certificate or something that I can then show somebody to then say it's real. But I don't know if I need it again anytime soon, uh, unless I want to buy a house, which we're not planning on doing. So yes, but I do have a stamp.
Jeff, what are you looking forward to? As we wind down Hopefully soon you're done with report cards, but in Japan, your family, your personal life, your teaching life, what you looking forward to?
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to the second semester here because I've gotten to know these students the first half of the year. And so seeing them perform, we've got a jazz festival and a jazz concert coming up in a couple weeks, which are really exciting and really showcase some of the work they've been working on, the music they've been practicing. I think I'm looking forward to the weather to be a little warmer here in Japan too. It's not super cold compared to the Northeast Philadelphia weather. We haven't seen any snow yet. We might not see any, but a little warmer weather and being able to explore a bit more. And, I think it's one of those things where, like I said, I'm new to the school and trying to figure out like all the processes and the people and the things that happen. And I feel like I know that more now, having been here for half a year. And so I'm kind of looking forward to the next part of the year where now I know those things and I can sort of take things to the next level. And I will say too, on a different note, we're planning on going back home to visit right after school gets out in June. Spend some time back home with family and friends. And before we left, I had a band that played Cuban music, which is where the travel to Cuba came in to play. And the band's still performing. And if everything goes according to plan, I'll have at least one or two performances with them while we're home. And so it'll be a nice reunion to play some music with some friends that we've really become a family over the past 12 years. So I miss them and certainly want to.
What's the name of the band?
It's called Conjunto Philadelphia. And yeah, it's music from Cuba from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, sort of like the Buena Vista Social Club. And so yeah, there's a website and there are videos on YouTube and all that good stuff. But yeah, so that's something I'm looking forward to. That'd be great. Yeah, I'm sure they would love it.
Have you ever heard of Orishas before?
I have. Yeah,
I love Orishas. They've got like 3 or 4 albums out, and they're not in Cuba. They're out of Cuba. I think they're in Europe.
Yeah,
but I love connections with music, no matter what. Please do us a favor, also at some point, if you have your first concert over there with your students and your first jazz concert, if you get a recording of it or a link to something that we could share on this podcast, we would definitely do that, or on our website, because we do have our website up now. And we would love to share some of that. It's your first year teaching over at that school, so it would be sort of exciting. And I can't wait for you to go home and share all of this with your family too, right? Yeah. It's exciting to give them a glimpse into what you have stepped into. Both you and your wife going back home and saying, here's what it's like to be in Japan as a family, our teaching and life overseas and learning Japanese, etc. I can't wait for that for you.
Jeff, will you come back and keep us updated? I feel like you're special to the ITP, and we would like to check in with you every once in a while. What do you think?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to come back. I will. This is an honor to be on here, guys, because like I said, I think I've listened to every episode, and you've sort of been here with me along the journey of going from thinking about international teaching to applying to now being here. And
our little boy's growing up, Kent.
He grows up so fast. I'm so
can't
proud.
wait to talk to Matt, and we can all celebrate.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
And I will say that, Greg, I have to just give a plug to your book, because
please do.
www.amazon.com, wherever you buy your finer books.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an episode without that, right? I did get a copy of it on
I
Kindle.
sold one.
That's three now. Your mom bought 2, and now Jeff.
Honestly, though, since I've already gone through the job search, I skipped the first part, and I've just been reading your stories in the back. But
all right, there we go. Skip to the end.
Yeah, I'll read the beginning as well, but the stories.
You secured a job, so now you can write your own book, right?
That's right. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us, and we look forward to hearing about your journey as you go. It's been so exciting. And any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up for today?
This international teaching thing, if anyone's listening who is not a teacher right now in international schools, it is something that you can do, and something that is certainly a big jump, and you certainly need to put some time into the process. But it is well worth the hours and hours of job searching and all the paperwork and making sure you have your teaching certificate up to date and writing cover letter after cover letter and all that sort of stuff. It's worth it because you'll end up on a really great adventure, and honestly, some days are not so great, right? And you're exhausted and just need a break from being always on in the new place. But most of the time, it's really magical and really an opportunity that I wish more people would have to really see the world. And I'm only on school one. I know you guys have been in many places, but I just encourage folks to give it a shot.
We would like to thank our very special guest, Jeff Torchon from the American School in Japan. Thank you all for joining us on the International Teacher Podcast. See you next time.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.